Good evening. Welcome to episode 5 of the Gorgie Boys podcast with myself, Graeme Duffy. It has been an absolutely beautiful day here all day today, but beautiful certainly wasn't the word I would use for yesterday, but we will come to that. We are here till 8 o'clock tonight. We'll be discussing the game from yesterday along with a few other things as well. And tonight, for the first time, I am joined by a guest. If you don't recognise him, why not? Because he's very popular. He does the fantastic Heart Standard. They are on YouTube, they are on X, and they are also on Facebook. If you don't already subscribe, then go and subscribe because they do cracking content. It is Craig Cairns. Craig, absolutely delighted to have you on. Thank you for coming on. How are you?
Very good. Perked up after that intro. Thanks very much. Just to add to what you said about the weather, it's strange for it to be this time and it's still to be really light outside as well. But I suppose that's what happens when the clocks go forward, isn't it?
Yeah, thankfully I'm able to put the clock forward this morning because I usually forget about that. But anyway, as I said, we've got a lot to get through. As always, the live chat is open, so get in there. We've already got a comment in from GM6 and 3 says, early gang and streams are back. Good to see people already joining the podcast. That's fantastic. As I say, a lot to talk about. We will come on to the Celtic game very, very shortly. But let's have a look back at a couple of things that happened during this past week. On Wednesday night, we had the news that Yutaro Oda was heading back to Japan, a permanent deal. He joined Shonan Bellmare. I hope I've not butchered that name. So he played 53 games for Hearts. He scored 7 goals. This season, he's only managed to have 9 games and he scored 1 goal. That was against Motherwell early on in the season at Fir Park. He's only played 1 game under Critchley. He has had injury problems and obviously his form's not been overly fantastic. This was muted a long time ago because the window was open for Japan. It was muted a long time ago that he might go back. Craig, probably no surprise that Oda's left. What were your main thoughts on Oda overall? Like I say, 53 games. He is still only 23. What was your kind of overall thoughts on Oda?
Yeah, he was kind of... I always felt he was somebody that was kind of unrefined. Like he had some raw attributes, but needed to kind of be polished up. And I don't know, maybe he found it difficult to even find a place, a regular starting berth at Hearts. And I can only go on this season mainly, certainly from watching him from week to week. Sorry, for not watching him from week to week, but like following what's happened to him this season. Before, I had more of one eye on it, kind of doing other jobs, covering Hearts. But the games that I saw him in at the start of the season and the one game under Critchley, he's just... he's got a lot of pace, but just didn't have enough kind of end product. And for whatever reason, Critchley didn't fancy him. It was a wee bit surprising that we didn't see a wee bit more of him under Critchley, in a sense, because when I was in Copenhagen, I think he had just come back from injury, and Critchley spoke quite glowingly about him. And we thought that he might get a chance at some point. I think, did he come on as a sub in that game? And then I think that might be the one appearance you're talking about. And then we haven't seen him since. So yeah, the time had come. I thought it might have happened in January, but you're right, with that window still being open over there, with this move coming up, it means he can go now. So it's not a surprise that he's left. It came slightly out of the blue this week, the timing of it. But I think if it didn't happen now, it was going to happen in the summer.
Something I always thought with Oda is I can never fault his work rate. He always worked really hard. He would work back. He would try and work forward as well. But I like wingers that when they get the ball, their first thought is take their man on. And I did feel at times it was a bit negative. When he had the chance to take his man on, he would maybe go back a little bit too much. That was always one criticism I had. But I can't fault his work rate. It's just, I like wingers that actually take a man on. And I just felt at times it was a little bit too negative at times.
Yeah, he got played at wing back a few times as well, which I don't think really suited him. And I don't know, he's one of kind of a long list of players that it's easy to say with hindsight, I know, because some of them can come and like be rough diamonds that you polish up and become really good players. But you just wonder that with the young players that have come through, why not like give more of them a chance rather than signings like these? But I don't know. Hopefully, Hearts are kind of changing that moving forward now. I mean, no harm to Oda. I do think some of it is circumstance. There's clearly something there. He'll go and find a level or a career somewhere, I'm sure. It's not always easy going to the other side of the world either. But yeah, playing in Naismith's kind of pragmatic formations and sometimes getting played at wing back maybe didn't suit him. And then there's just been too many players ahead of him You thought he would have got more of a shot, given that just about everybody else has played that right wing at some point, started on the right wing, but for one reason or another, Critchley didn't really fancy him.
Good evening to Gorgie. Hope you're having a good night so far. Yutaro Odo only like goals against Dundee and Hibs. He got his first goal was against Hibs, actually. If Oda got more consistent game time, I genuinely think he could have been a great winger. I mean, I suppose that's one thing with Critchley. We'll get on to Critchley later. But one thing that has always been a bit of a problem, and not just with Critchley, it's under Neil Nazy as well. We didn't really have a lot of quality out wide. We tried a few different players that didn't quite work. Oda, again, the word was used there, consistent. He just was never consistent enough.
Aye. I think, like, and what I was alluding to as well as what that guy's saying there is too, is that he probably wasn't used consistently enough to. There's a bit of both going on there, that he maybe didn't do enough to justify getting more time, and he wasn't given enough of a run in a sort of settled. Like, we know that Naismith liked to chop and change a lot, so he wasn't given like a consistent run in a position in a shape. So yes, part of it's circumstance, but part of it will be down to the player as well, obviously.
I wonder why Critchley never really played Oda, and honestly don't understand how he didn't get played when Hearts have players like Alan Forrest and George Grant. Yeah, I mean, again, that's another thing that a lot of people just don't like George Grant and Alan Forrest. I will be honest, I've never been a massive fan of George Grant. Mm-hmm. He's been here a couple of years now, and I could probably say on one hand the amount of good games he's had. Alan Forrest, again, he's not a bad player to have in reserve, but again, someone that I thought and think probably will end up leaving in the summer, along with George Grant, I think.
Yeah, I think they'll both be away. Forrest, it might be a matter of, because I think he's still contracted to 2026, I think, but it might be a matter of who's willing to come in and take him, or whether it's a loan initially or whatever. But yes, I don't think he'll be in the plans for next season. Grant, I don't think they'll renew his contract. I quite like Grant. I think Grant's similar to what we're saying about Oda there. I think he's a wee bit been shunted around a lot. There's never really been a sort of settled midfield that he's played in. Even under Critchley, which he's had some good performances under Critchley, he's still played lots of different positions. Second striker, number 10, right wing, one of the sixes, on the side of a diamond. At the same time, he's had some huge moments now that Hearts fans will forever remember him for, negative ones. So he'll always kind of have them hanging over him, which is quite unfortunate.
Yeah, well, good luck to Yutaro Oda back in Japan. And somebody else who probably will leave as well is Gerald Taylor, who again this week was playing for Costa Rica against Belize in the CONCACAF Cup and ended up getting injured, a knee injury. Apparently walked off the park in tears, and having watched a few games from this season, I'm not surprised. I think we all have. But anyway, that's probably harsh. But anyway, I mean, he started the season looking really good. He played the game against Tottenham in the preseason friendly, played against Rangers, looked like the second coming of Cafu. Sadly, he ended up being more like Raphael Scheidt, but we'll not get into that either. I mean, again, it's another one of these ones, Craig, that we've really struggled with injuries this season. Craig Halkett, who was back yesterday, Stephen Kingsley, Frankie Kent, Jamie McCart's been missing as well, and Gerald Taylor is another one. And obviously, I said at the start of the season, he was great. He was been out injured for 4 months from September till January. I think it's probably highly unlikely that we'll sign on a permanent deal now. Would you agree with that, or do you think there's any chance that Hearts sign a permanent deal next season?
Nah, I think the hope was that when he recovered from that injury earlier than expected, the first knee injury. This is a different knee injury. I did ask Critchley the other day whether it was the same injury, and he explained to me which part of the knee it was. I can't remember exactly what he said, but it's a different one. So it is quite unlucky. It's not like he's been rushed back and Costa Rica have misused them or nothing like that's gone on. It's just purely down to bad luck. But when he recovered earlier than expected from that first one, I think the hope for him anyway was that he would make enough of an impression by now in the end of the season that that Hearts would still be interested in triggering a permanent deal, basically. This probably puts all that up in smoke, I would imagine, because I think the chances were already quite thin. I don't think Since he's come back, he's been used sparingly. He wasn't too bad against St Mirren, was it? And then against Hibs, it was Hibs targeted him, and he had a nightmare, and we've not seen him since. And now with his injury, at least he was still another body. But yeah, you're right to highlight the injuries, because now Hearts are down to one recognised right back, and that's a guy who turns 20 tomorrow, and who started the season as the B team captain. And just to kind of add to the kind of injury story, I saw Lewis Nielsen getting a bit of criticism for yesterday's performance. I mean, I think some of the criticism's warranted, but I think it should be seen in the context as well as you mentioned, all these defenders that are out injured. There's 4 defenders that would likely have played ahead of him yesterday that are out injured, and he probably won't be part of Critchley's plans for next season. We're listing all these players. There's probably going to be a proper gutting of the squad in the summer, so it's kind of needs must at the moment with some players.
Yeah, we'll actually come on to Nielsen later on as well when we'll talk about Hearts. But I think like everyone else, I was so excited by Taylor. You know, he started the season on fire. That Rangers, he was so impressive. Like, this guy's going to be class. And then after that, he kind of played in a different formation. We kind of played him as a wing back almost, and it didn't really work under Naismith. Then he picked up the injury, and as you said, they were highlighted that Hibs game. I mean, he wasn't the only one that was poor that day, but you're right. Hibs did highlight that, and he was badly exposed that day.
Yeah, again, I mean, you highlight it again. It can't be easy for some players. And Naismith chopping and changing, how much that disrupted him, because he had a nightmare at Dens Park the week after playing well against. I mean, he might have anyway, but as you say, he was changed to play on as a wing back on the side of a back 3 rather than the back 4 he'd played in. Barry Mackay played pretty well in the opening game of the season as well. I know somebody mentioned that he's a lost cause. I don't disagree, but he had a decent game in that opening day of the season. Then was shunted in from left wing to number 10 in the back 3 shape. Didn't play well. Barely kicked the ball all season since. I mean, again, that might have happened already, but the chopping and changing can't help. And to add to the list of games that you're talking about, Taylor was actually pretty good the first game at Celtic Park as well. It seems to be the better the opposition, the better he was. But then there was games like Motherwell where he was culpable for the offside trap for one of the goals there. So yeah, it was a bit mixed. Definitely at fault himself. If let's face it, he's probably not going to get a permanent move, but it's down to him. But again, there are some circumstances there that have gone against him, not least the 2 injuries.
Yeah, well, again, as I did when you said Oda, wish nothing but the best of Gerald Taylor. I hope he gets back to full fitness soon, and whatever club he does go to, I hope he does really well. Before we get on to Celtic, one final thing from this week, and I have to mention it because it is brilliant. We had initially had 19,000 tickets for the Scottish Cup semi-final. That was sold out in the space of a few days. We asked for an extra 1,000. Again, that was sold out. Hearts are going to have over 20,000 at this game. I will be one of them. I cannot wait for this. Honestly, Craig, I kind of criticise Hearts fans occasionally when they criticise certain players like Lewis Nielsen. But for something like this, it is an incredible achievement. Even though Hearts have not been great this season, we're still trying to get top 6. It's not been a particularly great season. They still turn up in their thousands, and it is fantastic support we're going to be taking to hand them.
Yes. Hearts fans often disagree on a lot of things, but the support this season especially has been fantastic. The worst start ever in the club's history, and they were still out in their numbers at every away trip. Still packing out the stands and getting behind teams for European trips and things like that. And yeah, this is just this comes where there has been some better form. This comes off the back of there being some better form, but it just shows you how great a support out there there is for Hearts. But on the flip side, I mean, it's a huge game, and it's a lot of people to disappoint if they don't turn up on the day, because at the moment, if it had been a couple of months ago, I would have said Hearts are favourites, strong favourites. But I think Aberdeen are sort of incrementally improving now, I think. So it'll be interesting to see what state both teams are going into the game. But at the moment, I think it's a real kind of 50-50, and it's going to be a cracker. the novelty factor of it as well. The fact that Hearts, I think that's one of the reasons why some fans have picked up tickets so quickly as well. The fact that it's not against Rangers or Celtic like it has been quite often in recent times at Hampden. I know I've had Hibs a couple of times as well, but the novelty of playing Aberdeen there, I think's got people excited as well.
Well, we don't win at Pittodrie. They don't win at Tynecastle. This is neutral. I can't pick a favourite for this, man.
Hearts have got the home dressing room. Does that count?
I'm going to say yes. I don't know how many Aberdeen have sold. One of my mates who's an Aberdeen fan said just over 10,000. I don't know.
That's the last I heard, yeah.
Do you think there is a chance that Hearts might get more?
I'm not sure. I think this has gone either way in the past, hasn't it? I don't think there's a hard and fast rule with it. Yeah, I'm not entirely sure. I can't even remember the last time something like this happened. Maybe they do. Do they just sell out all the tickets? I honestly can't remember.
Nah, neither can I.
Be interested. That's something I need to try and find out then. It would seem weird for them to turn down tickets, but then again, you've heard stories about that kind of thing before, so yeah.
JM6 enthusiast, I thought Gerald Taylor's season ended after the first injury. I think, to be honest, a lot of folk probably thought that as well, but he did come
He was
back.
initially ruled out until all but the end of the season or something. When he came back in January, that was well ahead of schedule.
Yeah. Well, I am buzzing for the semi-final. One thing I wasn't buzzing for was yesterday, and when I spoke to Craig about coming on the show, we both said the same thing. Let's hope it's not hammering yesterday. It could have been a lot worse, given that half time. But as always, whenever a game starts, the talk is always about the team sheet, and Hearts lined up with, for the first time I think since Critchley came in, really, a back five. So we had Craig on in goal. Then it was a back three of Lewis Nielsen, Michael Steinwend, and a first start for Harry Milne. Then we had right wing back Adam Forrester, because we have nothing else, let's be honest. Left wing back James Penrice. Cammy Devlin was back. It was great to see him back alongside Beni. And their attacking threat was to be provided by Lawrence Shankland, Elton Cabangu, and James Wilson. On the bench for Hearts, Xander Clark. As I said earlier, welcome return for Craig Halkett, George Grant, Cam Noonhoff, Blair Spittle, Alan Forrest, Jan Dhanda, Sander Khartoum, and Musa Drami. Going into this, Craig, what was your thoughts initially on the starting 11 and the way that Hearts were going to line up?
I think... I mean, I think regardless of what shape you set up in when you go to a place like Celtic Park, I think it's more about how the game starts and how the game plays out to begin with. I do think that said, I do think moving away from the diamond was essential. I do think he needed something that was a bit broader across the middle of the park. But as we saw, that left more space in the middle of the park, and that's where Celtic got joy. So I think it was, and to be honest, it doesn't matter so much what shape you set up. It's how you kind of approach the game, and how Hearts approached the game was to be brave and press Celtic as high as they can. So having that, in theory, they would have like a bank of four across the midfield rather than their diamond, and then they had that sort of extra insurance of an extra defender at the back. So yeah, I was kind of intrigued to see how it would play out, but it was always going to be about, Critchley talks about how he wants Hearts to be on the front foot and all that kind of stuff. So it was going to be interesting. It was interesting to see whether he took that approach from the off against Celtic, and to be fair, and that's what he did. And Hearts were fairly successful at the start of the game.
You shouldn't expect tennis from Celtic Park anyway, as long as it isn't 5-0. I mean, we did win there last season, which was a kind of surprise. Our first win there in 14 years. I'll be honest, I didn't expect anything else yesterday. What I actually did like, though, and maybe a lot of folk wouldn't actually say this is a good thing, I don't know, but I actually quite liked the fact that he still had Shankland, Cabangu, and Wilson as an attacking threat, because we've all seen what Cabangu can do this season. He's got the pace. I like James Wilson as well. I did like the fact that he didn't go ultra defensive. He actually did still have attacking players on that mark.
Yeah, I think in hindsight, I don't think Shankland had a very good game. So I think you can look at it in hindsight and say maybe somebody like Khartoum, a bit sort of a guy who would be able to get up and down a bit more, or just naturally fall into the midfield a bit more. It's all easy to say in theory. Celtic can still find a way around you. But yeah, not only... what I found quite interesting about Hearts' attacking yesterday, Milne didn't sustain it for the whole half, but for the first 15 minutes, he was getting quite high up, almost playing like a left-back getting into the Celtic half. And regardless of how high he kind of got, it allowed Penrice to play a lot higher, and Hearts got a lot of joy out of Penrice playing higher, because he's been a wee bit more restricted in that diamond formation. And also, on top of that, without Spittle, Cabangu was pulling to the left a lot and linking with Penrice sometimes, but he was constantly dragging Cameron Carter-Vickers out there, got the better of him a few times, maybe could have picked out a better ball. Shanklin was free at the back post for that one that he kind of tries to drill across goal, and Sinisalo gets something on. And just while I'm on it with Cameron Carter-Vickers, how many fouls is Persistent fouling, by the way? Because I don't know how he didn't get a yellow card. I think one of them wasn't a foul, to be fair. I think Cabangu bought the first one. But still, 4 or 5 fouls in that first half, and no yellow card.
I was mentioning one of the group chats that morning, thinking about 9 fouls at one point and had to be actually booked for any of them.
Yeah.
Typically.
And they gave a foul against Devlin for a perfectly good challenge as well, when he initially hadn't given it. It was a bit bizarre. Like not that the referee had anything to do with the game yesterday.
I actually thought Hearts started the game quite well. Now, I always worry when we go to Celtic Park. My main thought is, please don't lose an early goal. We started off all right. I thought we actually, you mentioned the word there, and you mentioned it on the Hearts standard with Scott earlier on. You mentioned the word brave. I thought it was quite brave to try and be aggressive and try and play on the front foot. And I thought for large parts it did work. But when you go to Celtic Park at Ibrox, if you get chances, you have to take them. That Lewis Nielsen one from the corner kick, a great ball in. I was a little bit harsh on him because I thought maybe he could do better. But I think he doesn't get a bad connection. But it's a decent save from Fallow. But you need that to go in to give you any kind of chance or something to build on.
Yeah, I think he can do better with the strike, definitely. I just wonder whether somebody like Cabangu maybe kills it dead and then strikes it, or I don't know, is a bit more instinctive with their finish or something. He's fluffed a chance, yes, but I just I would cut him a bit of slack because he's a defender and it's on his weaker foot. You want it to fall to somebody else, I reckon. But I'm surprised that Forrester was... At first, it took me a while to... wasn't even paying attention to who was taking the corner. And then when I noticed it swing in and it was a right-footed one, I was kind of thinking, who's taking that? It took me a wee while to realise it was Forrester. It was a decent corner. It wasn't too far off. If somebody had made the proper run at the front post, then could have been like a really dangerous one. But you're totally right. To go back to your point, it's been a problem with Hearts all season. Even games that Hearts have won, they've missed chances. They've missed chances in games all season. There's games that Hearts have won narrowly at home, Motherwell, St Johnstone, where they've been well on top, and have won by a goal. And they should have been out of sight. And they've been lucky in a sense that they've not conceded a late goal. We've seen it hundreds of times. So yeah, it's been an issue all season. So if you're going to do it in those matches and get away with it, you're not going to get away with it when you go to Celtic Park and miss those kind of chances. And the one at 2-0 as well. That's a huge one.
Yeah, I'm going to come on to that. Sadly, we did lose the first goal 70 minutes in, and this is the problem with the press. If one player doesn't press properly, maybe I'm being a bit harsh on Cameron Devlin here, but it's passing it from the back from Celtic. It goes into Callum McGregor, who's got the freedom of Celtic Park, and you can't leave a guy like that unmarked in the middle of the park. It's a great ball through to Maeda, who's quick and he's sharp. Again, I've seen a lot of folk questioning Craig Gordon. I don't think there's much Craig Gordon can do about that because Maeda's quick. If he comes out, Craig Gordon, I don't think he's getting anyway. But this is the problem with the press. You can be brave, but a couple of passes and you're sliced apart.
Yeah, it's difficult to know exactly. Just to kind of repeat what I'd said earlier on our own show, it's difficult to know exactly when Hearts are, because there'll be certain players that Celtic get the ball, that's when it's triggered and that's when they all run, and then they all have to fill in for each other. Not like one goes, one fills, all that kind of stuff. It's all very sort of meticulous, and somebody's got it wrong there. It looks like it's Devlin. I don't know whether Devlin's done the right thing and somebody else hasn't moved, and that's what's wrong. But it looks to the untrained eye, if you like, that it's Devlin that's gone too far. And yes, when you give McGregor, I think that was a big one of the big reasons Celtic lost the week before is because McGregor wasn't playing. They dropped Engels into that position, and he's just nowhere near as good at dictating a game as Callum McGregor is. And it's no surprise that he was a big part of Celtic winning yesterday. He's just a quality player, unfortunately.
At Celtic Park, it's always when the first goal goes in that it falls apart. To be fair, it actually didn't fall apart that much after the first goal. I thought it might have done. We maybe had to get a bit of our breath back to try and get back in the game. Sadly, though, Celtic did get the second goal. Again, great balling from Kuhn. The ball goes over Lewis Nielsen's head. He took a lot of stick here, so come on to that shortly. Header by Maeda comes off the post, and it's followed in by Jota. And at that point, I think after 24 minutes, Craig, you are fearing the worst.
Yes. I mean, that was a complete mistake from Nielsen. He misjudges it. There's no doubt about it. But yeah, to go back to what I said earlier, I don't think he's somebody that we'll see at Hearts next season or see much of at Hearts next season. I think there will be players ahead of him in the pecking order before the end of this season. He's kind of been rushed back in because of injury and things like that. So it's hard to be too harsh on the guy. But yeah, he was at fault. He was at fault for that. It's a nice bit of play from Celtic. It's a great run, to be fair. But yeah, he misjudges the flight of the ball. They get a little bit of luck. I'm more disappointed with the first. I know you're going to come in, but the first and third goals, I'm more disappointed in the fact that All Hearts' work was undone. All Hearts' good work was undone in those two goals by just a couple of passes and the whole team's bypass. That for me is more disappointing.
I couldn't figure out what Craig Gordon was raging about with that second goal, because he was moaning at the referee, and I couldn't figure out what he was moaning about.
I don't know whether he was trying to say. At first, it looked like he was trying to say his vision was impaired or something, but there was no hint of offside or anything. So honestly, don't know. Unless there was something else before that, I honestly don't know. I didn't know what he was talking about either.
He looked raging, but I couldn't figure out why. Jamie, Beni should get Player of the Year. I think it's between Beni and James Penrith, because James Penrith has been fantastic. Now, we mentioned chances, you mentioned James Wilson, and this is a massive one. It's a fantastic ball at the box. Wilson's on his own. I'm a big fan of Wilson. He's only 18. He scored 6 goals this season, but he will know more than anyone that he has to do better with that. It's a golden opportunity, and he doesn't even get out of target. You have to hit the target with that.
There's another one. Before that, I was talking earlier about the connection between Penrice and Cabangu. There's one where Penrice wins the ball, gets to Cabangu on the left, and he whips in a great ball. And Wilson doesn't quite gamble enough. And even in the build-up to that chance as well that you just talked about, Wilson's header, Hearts have a really good break. I think it's like 4-on-3 or something like that. And he tries to pick out Shankland. He maybe should slide in Forrester to his right, but he tries to pick out Shankland, and he even fluffs that. And he's lucky to even get that chance at the back post after he's almost broken down that good break for Hearts. Yes, it was a very out of sorts performance. It was no surprise to see him come off at half-time. He's not somebody that deserves... obviously, mistakes are mistakes. You highlight them, but it's a young player like that. After he's come on so much this season, don't want to be too harsh on the guy. He'll know himself where he's gone wrong and where he needs to improve. But yes, it's interesting. He doesn't get quite... Forrester gets a lot more stick. I know he's got more of a ceiling and more potential than Forrester and all this kind of thing, but Forrester gets a lot more stick, whereas Wilson can have games like that and not get stick. But when Forrester does, because he's a defender, and it puts the fear into fans whenever defenders make mistakes, because there's much more chance that it's going to lead to a goal. I think that's why Forrester tends to get more stick. But one of the reasons. But Wilson has had games where he's either missed chances like that, made the wrong decision when he's been in a good position, or just been very, very quiet as well. So, he's been very hot and cold this season, but his bad performances don't seem to get highlighted as much. Not that I want people to be getting on his back or anything like that. I don't mean to sound like that.
I mean, it has been an incredible rise, because I remember he made his debut against Spartans in a Scottish Cup tie when Lawrence wasn't available. And he was just like a scrawny little teenager, and he's grown massively in terms of stature. He's now obviously 18. He's in the Scotland squad. He probably wouldn't have expected to play many games this season. You know, Critchley came in, he chucked him in there, and he's been really, really good. He's going to have, obviously, like every young player, he's going to have off days. Yes, he was one of those. But I think we have to remember the rise that he has had this season. I mean, the fact that he was in that Scotland squad and the fact he came on against Greece, that was like the only highlight for me against Greece, was him coming on. Mm-hmm. It's been an incredible rise for him this season because it was unexpected.
Yes, and he's already put on just even not even just breaking in and announcing himself, like memorable moments that he'll remember for the rest of his career. First goal, you're always going to remember that, as ugly as it was. But then a few days later, or what was it, 6 days later or something like that, he scores an equaliser at Easter Road off the bench. He's played in Europe. He's scored in Europe, and he's become the youngest Scotland international ever. Although I did hear Liam McLeod in the highlights say the youngest player in the modern era, which I don't think it's quite true. I think you could say on record, because some records are sketchy, but I think he's definitely the youngest on record. There's actually a little bit of confusion because the person who's taken the record off, there's actually an error on the SFA website. They credit him as having his first cap when he was first called up, but apparently he was replaced at the last minute in that squad and didn't make his debut, and then didn't make his debut until he actually turned 18 for the next squad or something. So I think that's where the confusion comes from, because it was back in the 1890s or something.
Gary Morini, he goes under the radar in comparison to attention on his performances, unlike Forrester by a majority, which is basically what you just said there, Craig. And the game, sadly, is over after 40 minutes again down that right-hand side. Great play again by Kuhn. Really, really quick. Ball across the box, Maeda scores. And as I say, going into half-time, 3-0 down, you are fearing this could be 6 or 7. There's a load of changes at half-time. Celtic do have chances second half, but they kind of stem the flow. I mean, honestly, Craig, I think like most Hearts fans, I was sitting there at half-time going, oh no, can we just end this now, please? Because I'm really concerned.
Yeah, the last thing I want to watch is Hearts sitting in, limiting the damage for 45 minutes. But again, I think it was needs must. Critchley tried something. He would have learned some things from it. He got some success from it, but ultimately was undone by a better team. And then he just had to make sure he didn't embarrass himself and give his team a big psychological blow. So yeah, they sat in and saw it out. It was actually a little bit worrying that they weren't going to do that at first, because the first thing of the half was Jota bursts down the wing and puts, I think Gordon does well to get something on it, but he puts a really dangerous ball across goal. And you just thought, this is going to be the longest 45 minutes. But thankfully, it was still a long 45 minutes, but in a boring way rather than getting absolutely pummeled way.
Yeah, I mean, first half, we obviously did have threats. Like I said, second half, that kind of waiver didn't really look that threatening, but it's understandable. You're 3-0 down, as you say, it's damage limitation. We did make a load of subs. And actually, somebody mentioned him earlier on, actually. I had such high hopes for Jan Dhanda this season. And I actually said this weeks and weeks ago. The one player that I was excited by when he came in was Jan Dhanda, and he really hasn't delivered. Now, I know he's had it difficult because he has been injured as well. But when he has featured, he's not really done a lot. He played against Petrol Cub at Tynecastle, and he was awful. And he's just never regained the form that I thought he would had. Now, is it because, obviously at Ross Kent, he was the main man. He was the guy that everyone looked to. Is Hearts just too big a step up for him?
I don't know. It's a step up that not that's difficult for players and managers to make. You see it all the time. You see lots and lots of players and managers go from someone like Motherwell or Ross County or St Mirren. I know those vary in level of size and vary a bit in level and size, but just in general, that to the next tier, which is like Hearts, Aberdeen, Hibs, you see so many struggle to make that step up. And yeah, for one reason or another, Dhanda's fallen into that bracket. I feel like I'm just repeating myself, but I think it's the same with what I said earlier. Again, Hearts had a bloated squad, and looking back on it, it's a bit silly. They were never going to keep all these attacking midfielders happy. So who knows if Hearts hadn't made as many signings in the summer or had got rid of some players or Jan Dhanda had been given a proper run. Hearts had stuck with one shape at the start of the season and given Jan Dhanda a run as the number 10. Who knows? He could have gone on to be a very good player for Hearts. There's definitely part of it, again, with him not really finding a position. And he spoke about it himself, about him not really playing in his position when he has played. He's tended to play either on the wings of the 4-2-4 or of what, like a 4-2-3-1 or whatever. He's tended to play on the side rather than the centre, and that's his preferred position.
Dhanda's also not used to competition. At County, he was a star, but now he's at Hearts. He has to fight for a place against Spittle, Grant, Hoff, and even Shankland at CM, which is a fair point. But Hearts did go down to a 3-0 defeat yesterday, but it did keep us in the top six because Motherwell did lose to Aberdeen yesterday, and this fight for top six is so tight. So Dundee United won today against Ross County. They're now on 44 points. They're in fifth. But between Hearts and sixth and Ross County and ninth, there is only 4 points. We've got 39 points. St Mirren's got 38. Motherwell's got 38. Ross County's got 35. The last 2 games before the split, Hearts take on Dundee United at Tynecastle next week. Then they'll wait on Motherwell. Motherwell's last 2 games are Kilmarnock away, then us. St Mirren have Dundee away and Ross County at home. And Ross County, who are probably outside chance of top 6, they have Aberdeen at home and St Mirren away. I mean, it is so tight, Craig. Do you think Hearts will get top 6?
I think so. I think it's all going to come down to to state the obvious. I think it's all going to come down to the Motherwell game. I think Hearts will beat Dundee United at home. I don't think Dundee United are that great at the moment. I think they're on the wane. Sorry, I've just unplugged something. I'm going to get this back.
That's all right.
So I think even like this narrow win against Ross County, I saw some of that earlier, and they still weren't great. They've got a wee bit of a defensive issue with Holt leaving in January and a couple of injuries and stuff. So I think Hearts will win at home to Dundee United. It then comes down to what is going to be required against Motherwell. Are Motherwell still going to be a point behind? Are St Mirren still going to be a point behind? I think it's going to come down to what Hearts need on that day. They might need to go to Motherwell and win, and I don't know. It's easier said than done. Motherwell are a difficult one to judge at the moment with their new manager. I think they got a win under him. Got a couple of results under him recently, but they've lost the last 2, I believe. I'd need to look that up, actually. Don't quote me on that. But yeah, point is, you don't know what you're getting from Motherwell at the moment under a still very early days of a new manager.
Dundee St Mirren's an interesting game. Gary Mulroney. What is interesting for me with Wilson is his low volume of chances. Wilson's took 12 shots, scoring 4 goals.
Yeah.
This output came from an expected goals XG of 2.26, averaging 0.19 XG per shot this season.
Yes, so that's just in the league. That's interesting because I noticed that when I was looking at those recently. I think I was looking at stuff to do with Shankland and the similar stats to do with Shankland, and I noticed Wilson, he doesn't take many shots, but he takes high quality shots. He gets high quality chances. So that's a very interesting thing and to keep an eye out on. It's still a very small sample size to judge him on, and he's still very young. As you said, filled out recently, he's still very young, and he'll continue to grow for a few years yet. So that's an interesting one to keep an eye on, that he, for whatever reason, he can either suss out to be in the right place for high quality chances, or he only allows himself to take those ones. He doesn't just shoot for the sake of it. Like, you compare him to Shankland at the start of the season, he was just getting more and more frustrated and just shooting whenever he could see half the goal or whatever. So yeah, that's definitely something that caught my eye and something to look out for.
Good evening, Sean. Hope you're well. Now, I do want to touch on Neil Critchley, but I do want to touch on something you mentioned earlier, because I was going to talk about this, and it is Lewis Nielsen. I saw him getting a lot of stick on social media and in group chats. Also the same Adam Forrester. I've heard that numerous times over the last few weeks. But yes, I think Nielsen was at fault yesterday, but I think we've got to remember he's only 21 and he's only playing because of the injuries we've got at centre-half. Up until yesterday, I actually think he's done quite well alongside Michael Steinwender. Going to Celtic Park is never going to be easy. You're playing against far better quality. And you're playing a back three where that was a very young back three yesterday. You've got Lewis Nielsen at 21. You've got Harry Milne at 28 and you've got Michael Steinwender at 24. It's a young back three. And I think Nielsen will learn from that. But I think the stick that he's getting, and a lot of folks saying he's not good enough for Hearts, I kind of disagree. I just think he needs a bit more experience alongside him.
Fair enough. I mean, he's definitely got some potential, and he's not like a write-off or anything. You're right. He's a very young player, and he's had a bit of a weird season. He started the season at St Johnstone. He played several positions for them. He played across the defence. He even played at left back a couple of times for them, and centre midfield, defensive midfield as well. And he's not quite been shunted about at Hearts, but that was a different shape for him yesterday at Celtic Park. Not something that they've played in together in that defence. And even in the short time that he's been in the team, he has played on the left side when he's right-footed. I actually thought Steinwender would have been the one that was moved over just because he was like the more senior centre-back, but they kept him there and put Nielsen there. And you can see sometimes that is awkward in possession. You do, just for passing angles and stuff, it's like it's better to have a left-footer on the left side of the defence, in my opinion anyway. And you see that you lose that a bit. As good as Nielsen can be on the ball, you see him always wanting to shuffle it onto his right foot, and then you're always looking to pass in the pitch rather than to the side. So, yeah, I think he'll be a good player. I think he'll find somewhere else that he'll do well. I'm just not convinced that's going to be Hearts.
I thought this might come up at some point. Feel bad for Xander Clark. I honestly believe that if Xander Clark was playing another Scottish team, he'd be playing every week. But the fact is that Craig Gordon is still number one. Has Gordon made mistakes this season? Yes, of course he has. He's 42. He's come back after double leg break. He still does make fantastic saves. But this is something that comes up a lot, Craig. Now, I believe, I might be wrong, but I think this will probably end up being Craig Gordon's last season, and then Xander Clark will take over next season. But what have you made of this whole goalkeeping situation? Because it gets talked about so many times.
Yeah, it's probably been quite unhealthy, both internally and externally, I would say. Not that there's anything toxic going on, or I'm not trying to suggest that there's any I don't know of any ill feeling behind the scenes or anything like that. I don't mean to suggest anything like that for a second. But you've just they're going to be fully aware of external debates and all that kind of stuff. And Xander Clark will see himself as a number one and did start this season as number one. So you can imagine he will be disappointed. He will have some negative emotions about it. There's no doubt about that. And it's a strange one that he has signed a new deal and that he's still not playing. It's a strange one. And to me, that must mean there's some sort of agreement in place that, again, no insider knowledge, but there must be some sort of agreement in place that Craig Gordon is going to call it quits in the summer and Xander Clark is going to be given a shot at being number one next summer, because I just can't see otherwise how they would have convinced Xander Clark because he's getting towards the end of his career himself. I mean, he's probably going by Craig Gordon, he's got like another 10 years in him. I know goalkeepers going for longer, but still, there's no guarantees, and these are like prime years for him. He could be Scotland goalkeeper if he was Hearts number one potentially as well. So you've got to imagine he's itching and won't be happy being back up next season. And for the sake of, I don't know, personally, my health and just Hearts fans in general's mental health, I don't think we want to go into next season talking about Xander Clark or Craig Gordon. Please, I want it sorted one way or another, please.
Yeah, I don't believe for 1 second that he signs that new contract without getting guaranteed he's going to play. I just don't think he signs it. And there was all that talk before the window shut about him going to Hibs. I don't know at all. I just found that crazy. He was never going to go there. But I honestly think we're very blessed to have two very good goalkeepers. And it is a shame for Xander Clark because he plays at any other club. It's just that Craig Gordon's in front of him.
And Hearts needed him. And he was there when Hearts needed him and did well. I mean, I think Hearts could probably do better than Xander Clark, but I think he's a perfectly good goalkeeper for Hearts, and I think he did that. I mean, again, he's going to have some limitations like most players in Scottish football do, but yeah, it's going to be an interesting one to see what they do in the summer. If Scott mentioned to me earlier, Scott McIntosh said to me that he thinks or wants, I can't remember which, that Hearts should go and look for another number one in the summer. So it will be interesting to see what they do, whether they do look for. For me, they're not going to. Joe mentioned this, but I don't think they're just going to mention. They're going to promote one of the young guys like Harry Stone or something like that. I think they will go for either your sort of quintessential number two that's kind of happy to sit on the bench and just play when he needs to, like a Steve Banks type thing or something like that. Or whether they're going to go for somebody who is there to compete and possibly take the gloves off Xander Clark at some point in the season. I don't know what route they're going to go down.
I think Xander Clark will be number one next season because Craig Gordon needs to sit back. I think he probably will, to be honest. But I do want to talk about Neil Critchley because this has bugged me for a while. And I've actually said it on your podcast before in the group, in the chats and stuff. But I have still, after yesterday, heard a lot of talk about Neil Critchley has to go. I've got mates in group chats and he's not good enough. I completely disagree. Now, when he first came in October, was I overly thrilled? No, because I thought he could have got better. And it's nothing against Neil Critchley. I just reckon I thought it's not particularly great. But he came in October at a time where Hearts were really struggling. We weren't winning games. We were really poor in a relegation battle. Since he's come in, we've played 31 games in all competitions. We've won 15. We've lost 10. We've scored 49 and lost 39 goals. I think as well, when you consider the fact when he came in, we were playing every Thursday, Sunday. He wasn't getting a chance to train the players. He's had one transfer window. I also said earlier, I like the fact that in most games, he does try to play an aggressive attacking style of football, which a lot of folk like. He's damned if he doesn't, damned if he doesn't. I'm a big fan of Critchley. I think he needs more than one transfer window. I'm intrigued to see what's going to happen next summer with the players that go out and the players that come in with the whole Tony Bloom Jamestown stuff. But I just do not understand the negativity surrounding Neil Critchley. A lot of folks say he doesn't win big games. Personally, I think every big game is a big game. I don't look at Celtic, Rangers, Hibs and Aberdeen. I look at every game. If you go back to the game at Pittodrie, you mentioned it earlier, that wasn't on Neil Critchley. That was a missed penalty by George Grant. Or you could say it was a good save. You look at the game at Tynecastle against Rangers, the 3-1 game. We were brilliant that day. We got back to 1-1. Should have won a penalty. Didn't get it. If we get that, we go 2-1 up. They got the park and score. I think he's been unfortunate in some games. The Hibs games, yes, massive letdown. I get that. But I think the criticism of Neil Critchley for me is well over the top. And the folk wanting him out, everyone's got opinions, I know that. But I just think that folk wanting him out need to get a grip here. And I remember where we were when he first came in.
I think that's a very good point about what he's taken up, where he's got Hearts to from where he took them from the semi-final of a cup. They went out of the League Cup, the first match they were involved in. So yeah, from the bottom of the league winless to still with a sort of an increasingly disappearing chance of getting European football through the league, but in the semi-final, good chance of playing in the Scottish Cup final come the end of the season. So yes, I think those things have to be taken into consideration. And I do think that it should be a positive that, I don't know, for me, that go to start off, when you were talking about when he was first appointed, similar to you, I mean, I didn't Not so much that I thought Hearts could do better, because it's more that I didn't know. I looked at his record and I didn't see anything there that convinced me either way. I didn't see anything that made me think this guy's definitely going to get Hearts going. I was just like, it was more, and I said this at the time, it was just more, let's give this a chance. Let's see. Hearts are trying something different. Hearts have entered a new era with Jamestown and all this kind of stuff. They're trying something different. Let's ride it out. Let's see what happens. And I don't think you're kind of all in or not with this thing. I don't think you can just chuck the towel in after. Obviously, if it gets to a point where it's so bad, things have to change. There's no doubt about it. It's the same for any manager, any head coach. Neil Critchley will know that himself. But I think just because there is possibly a trend developing against certain teams, two of which are quite difficult to beat given budgets on any given day, regardless of what form they're in. They just completely out budget and have better players, and that can just be difficult to overcome. There could be this narrative developing, yes, of big games, but at the same time, at least he's shown some positives. There are negatives there, yes. He's not going to come in and win every game between now and the end of the season. But look at his record against the other team. It's almost flawless. He's beaten all the teams that he should. Remember previous managers that struggled to break down 10-man Dundee when they sat behind the ball, or 10-man Ross County when they sat behind the ball. We had one at the start of the season that was struggling with it. So at least he's doing that. At least, as you said, there's an identity there. There's an attacking, exciting way of playing there. Sometimes that's going to go wrong and you'll accidentally score a couple of own goals at home at Rangers, even though you've played well. Things like that are going to happen, especially in the early stages. But for me, I think there's been enough progress there. He's working with players that he's not going to want to have at the club next season, that are going to free up some big wages for him to get his own players in next season. I think he's shown enough. And are we just going to become Hibs and change our manager every year? We're on the verge of becoming that anyway.
I mean, one of the things that I got, he won't mind me mentioning this, but one of my mates had mentioned in our group chat yesterday that he's not great tactically, which I again disagree with. I think he does know what he's doing.
Yeah, I disagree with that. I think he's maybe limited. He's made mistakes, and I think he's learning as he goes from things. There's definitely errors that he's made, but he's also I think that was one of the things you saw yesterday. He's limited by the players he has to an extent. I think he got that right at the start yesterday. The players didn't execute. And ultimately, his system and how he set them up has left them that open to concede those goals that they've conceded, yes. But he's got them into a position where they've created chances and they haven't taken them. And Hearts don't always create that amount of chances at Celtic Park.
Again, I don't want to go back to just one game, but with Hearts fans, the biggest narrative, and I know this as a Hearts fan as well, the biggest narrative is not winning the derby games. Mm-hmm. Now, I get that completely. We've not been good enough this season, but again, I don't think that's just on him. That's on the players as well. You look at the game at Tynecastle, the game we lost 2-1 through Dwight Gale's goal. We weren't great, but I thought first half we were all right, but then second half we just fell apart. The game at Easter Road, again, it wasn't a great performance. Those have to be better, and if we finish top six and get Hibs again, we have to win that. But I understand why fans are not happy about that. But you've got to look at the games that he's played. Like I said, he's won more than he's lost. And I think there is an identity. He's brought through guys like Forrester. Okay, he's had to because there's been nothing else there. He's brought in the likes of James Wilson, which has been great. But he does still have players like that club that won't be there next season. Barry Mackay needs to come off the wage bill. Alan Forrest probably will go as well. I'm intrigued to see what he does next season. One window for me is not enough. We did that with Daniel Stendhal. He had one window, signed 4 players. If you look at the players that he's brought in this season, I think all 5 of them have been quite a success. Kabanga's been great, 8 goals this season. Jamie McCart, before he was injured, was fantastic. Steinwinder's been great. Sander Khartoum got the goals against Dundee. And obviously, Harry Milne's only just played yesterday, but I think he's done
you bring like James Wilson into that, and Adam Forrester. Yeah. I mean, they're essentially players that he's brought in to. And they were on the verge before, I know that, and I think Forrester played the 3 games under Fox interim, but that's still new players that he's kind of integrated into the team as well. And there's a couple of other players that have improved since he's come in as well.
No, absolutely. And I suppose that the one gripe that a lot of Hearts fans have, and I think I probably thought at the time as well, was the fact they didn't bring another wide player in January. But they are very difficult to find. If you're looking for a specific player, it's very difficult to find. We tried to get the Kazakhstan boy. That didn't quite happen. Whether that might still happen, I don't know. But I'm sure that's something that will be identified in the summer, along with a potential right back as well.
Yeah, I think you're right. They weren't going to just get somebody in for the sake of it. They've rotated that right wing position enough. They weren't going to get somebody else who was just a sort of a roll of the dice to see if he could like make it or not. They're going to hold out for the type of profile of the player they're looking for. And if that means wait until the next window to get the right player, I think that's what they'll do. Not that necessarily will be Islam. Is it Islam Chernikov? Something like that. Not that it necessarily will be him, but I think they will look for a sort of... It looks like they're looking for a left-footed, quick winger to kind of play on the right, cut in from the right. That's what they're looking for, I think.
Before we head off, I do want to talk about one player. He was mentioned earlier on in the chat here. So again, thank you for all your comments, guys. It's much appreciated. And that is Beni Baningime. I think he has been outstanding this season. And when he hasn't played, we have missed him. I'm a huge fan of Beni. Obviously, the one thing about Beni is the injuries that he's had. But this season, Craig, when he has played, he's been so important. He keeps the ball really well. His work rate is fantastic. Being in the diamond is difficult because he's been on his own in there quite a few times. But he very rarely gives the ball away. He's always there for a pass. I just think Beni is so crucial to Hearts and how we play.
I think he was one of the standouts for Hearts yesterday. I think he was still doing what you're saying there, still taking the ball. I think he was like Devlin. He didn't get caught out for a goal like Devlin did, but he was similarly kind of caught out a couple of times, just with how much ground he and Devlin had to cover in that midfield area. But I thought in possession, he was the one player that was good enough. It wasn't even just being brave enough. There was lots of players that were trying to be brave that maybe weren't quite good enough to do it, but he's just got so much finesse about the way he plays. He's just so good at turning, giving someone a dummy and going one where the way he works in tight spaces is absolutely brilliant. And in recent times as well, just how high up the pitch he's been doing his pressing. And it means he's getting involved in attacks more as well. Because he's winning the ball higher up and Hearts are just playing much higher up, he's now, rather than spinning away from a defender just outside his own box and looking for a pass, he's now sometimes doing that on the edge of the opposition box, which is really good to see. Still kind of nosebleed territory a wee bit for him for like when it comes to shooting and things like that, but he's definitely become a much more productive player in the final third this season.
Yeah, that there's been a couple of times been at the games and my lad who's 13 goes to me, why does Beni not shoot? It's like, he gets
do you remember his 2 goals? His 2 goals are pretty much slide tackles.
Oh, it's great. Just didn't ask him to shoot, but it's funny. Gary, the Maroon Report, tactical noise I've seen regarding Critchley's formation or tactics is misunderstood and hyper-focus on formations when asking me opinions, and it's generally a set-up numbers, MSN, etc. used as reference. I mean, I keep on saying it. I am still a massive fan of Critchley, and I think, as I say, that the last couple of games in the league are going to be so important to get top 6, and then that semi-final is going to be absolutely huge. But there's no reason Hearts can't win that. You know, you mentioned it earlier. It's going to be a fantastic occasion. Hearts fans at the stadium. It's going to be outstanding. And I still think there are things that you can look forward to this season. I know it doesn't look that way, but I think there are still things you can look forward to.
Yeah, aye. It's going to be... I try not to think about it because people are going to be really, really disappointed if... there's going to be all the criticism we see just now is going to be amplified so much more if Hearts don't win that semi-final. But they have to go into it with confidence. Not only can Hearts be good on their day, be really good on their day, and they've got match winners in the team there. Aberdeen can be got at. Aberdeen have got some good players as well. Some dangerous players. Nisbet's come on a game. But Hearts, if go there and play to their ability, Hearts should be really confident about that game. There's no reason why they can't go and win it.
Absolutely. Well, we're at the end of the hour. It just remains for me to thank everyone for the comments, for the chat. It's been much appreciated. It's been a great chat. I've thoroughly enjoyed that. Thank you very much to Craig for coming on as my first guest. It is much appreciated, mate. Really appreciate you coming on and taking your time out. It's been really, really, really good.
Thanks for having me.
Again, next Sunday after the Hearts and United game. Hopefully a big result for Hearts next week. Anyway, hope you have a cracking week and take it easy, people.